Welcome to the Stoic Golden Tribe, where enduring wisdom meets the strength of presence, and where we uncover the truths modern society refuses to teach men. Tonight, we explore something deeper than silence. You no longer text her. No more checking in, no more over-explaining, no more late-night paragraphs trying to prove your worth. And yet, at 2 a.m., when the world is quiet and distractions fade, her mind speaks your name louder than any message ever could. This is not about games or manipulation. It's about the power of self-respect, the shift that happens when a man chooses himself over chasing what cannot be held. In this video, we'll break down the emotional psychology of absence, the silent echo of a strong man's withdrawal, and why it's often when you stop reaching out that her deepest feelings begin to surface. Because in the stillness of the night, when the lights go out and no one's watching, she remembers not the guy who chased her, but the man who let go and never looked back. Let's dive in. Chapter 1. The Power of Your Silence. What she hears. When you say nothing. There's something profound about silence, not just the absence of noise, but the presence of restraint. When you stop texting her, you're not just removing words. You're removing validation. You're removing that soft, emotional pillow she's come to expect from your energy. You see, most men underestimate the gravity of their presence. They think the texts, the good morning messages, the check-ins, the apologies, those are what keep her around. But what truly makes a woman feel your worth is what happens when you pull your energy back completely. At first, she might not notice. She'll assume you're just busy. She'll brush it off, confident in the idea that you'll eventually return. But then the hours stretch, the days pass. The pattern she was used to breaks. And that's when something begins to stir inside her. Because women are deeply intuitive, they don't just respond to what you say. They react to the emotional tension behind your silence. That 2 a.m. moment? It's not random. It's when her guard is down, when the world sleeps and the mind wanders. And it's in that stillness that your absence speaks the loudest. She remembers the way you used to care, the way your words once felt like warmth, but now that warmth is gone. She checks her phone, not because she expects a message, but because her heart wishes there was one. You're not chasing, you're not proving, you're not explaining your worth anymore. And this is where your strength as a man begins to command more weight than any romantic gesture ever could. Your silence forces reflection. She starts wondering, did he lose interest? Did I go too far? Has he moved on? And more importantly, why does this bother me so much? See, the moment a woman starts asking herself these questions, she's no longer thinking about control. She's no longer in the comfortable seat of power. She's feeling the difference between a man who begged and a man who withdrew, feeling the sting of his absence, feeling the space where his presence used to live. And here's the truth, a woman may not always show it. She may laugh, post, pretend to glow up. But the mind doesn't lie at 2 a.m., it drifts to what's unfinished. It replays what she didn't appreciate. It reopens the emotional loop you refused to close for her. This is why silence is not weakness. It's wisdom, it's control, it's the ultimate mirror that reflects her behavior back at her, without you saying a single word, because when you stop texting her, you're telling her something without telling her anything. I'm not waiting for you to realize my value, I already know it. That alone shifts the entire dynamic. And when she feels that, she'll begin to see the contrast between you and every other man who still chases her like she's the prize. But you've become the mystery she can't decode, the silence that screams, the presence she only truly feels in your absence. Drop a comment below. Have you ever noticed a woman acting differently once you stopped reaching out? What changed? Chapter 2. Why her mind can't escape you. At 2 a.m. by day, she's distracted. Her phone buzzes with attention. Her world is loud, social media, work, friends, and the illusion of control. She might even convince herself she's over you. But at 2 a.m., the mask slips, because that's when everything slows down. The likes don't feel like love, the comments don't fill the void, and the attention she once thought was power starts to feel empty. And there you are, not physically, but mentally, emotionally. That's the moment your name echoes through the silence she pretends doesn't bother her. Why? Because emotional bonds don't vanish just because the conversation stops. They live in the spaces we don't speak about. And for a woman, the absence of a man who once made her feel seen cuts deeper than she'll ever admit. When you used to text her, she felt in control. Every reply from you was reassurance. It validated her status in your life. She could measure your affection by how quickly you replied and how long you stayed available. But the moment you stopped, you became unmeasurable. You became the question mark, and human psychology hates question marks. Now, every time she opens Instagram, she wonders why you haven't watched her story. Every time she posts, there's a tiny hope you'll see it, maybe even react. But you don't. And in your stillness, she begins to spiral. Here's what no one tells you. A woman can only pretend to be unaffected for so long. If your connection was real, if she ever felt something deep, she will revisit the memory of you in her quiet moments. And because you're no longer giving her updates, responses, or reactions, her mind has to do the work you used to do. She starts imagining what you're doing. She starts remembering things that used to feel small, your tone, your attention, your care. She replays conversations not because she misses what you said, but because she misses how it made her feel. And that feeling is haunting, especially when she realizes she may not find it again in the new guy, the one she thought would replace you, the one who might be physically present but emotionally shallow, the one who chases but doesn't challenge, because while he texts constantly, you're quiet. And that quiet is deafening. You see, emotional impact isn't always loud. Sometimes it's the quiet man she can't forget, the man who didn't need to prove himself, the one who didn't beg, didn't chase, didn't stay where he wasn't respected. At 2 a.m., it's not about who she talks to, it's about who she thinks about. And if you walked away from her with peace, self-respect, and emotional clarity, you've left behind an imprint her mind struggles to erase. Because most men are forgettable. They overexpose their emotions, give everything too fast, and leave nothing to wonder. But the rare man, the man who values his energy, who disappears without drama, who lets her feel the weight of his absence, he becomes unforgettable. And here's what she'll never say out loud. Part of her wishes you would reach out. Not because she deserves it, but because it would relieve the pressure building inside her chest. It would silence the questions, the doubt, the guilt. But the fact that you don't, that's what keeps her mind locked in that moment. At 2 a.m., she doesn't just miss you. She starts realizing she might have lost something she didn't understand when she had it. That's the power of doing nothing, of not texting, of letting time do what words never could. Drop your thoughts below. Have you ever had a woman show signs she's thinking about you without even saying a word? Chapter 3. When a man walks away without noise, he becomes her loudest memory. A man who chases validation is loud, always texting, calling, explaining. But a man who knows his value doesn't need noise. He walks away silently, with dignity, and lets his absence do the talking. And it's that kind of silence that becomes unforgettable. When you stop texting her, you're not just withdrawing communication, you're withdrawing permission. Permission for her to take your time for granted. Permission for her to disrespect your effort. Permission for her to think you'll always be there. At first, she might celebrate your disappearance. She may say to her friends, "I don't care. He stopped talking to me and I'm fine with it." She might post a picture with a caption like "unbothered," but don't let the performance fool you, because the performance isn't for you, it's for herself. She's trying to convince her own mind that your absence doesn't hurt. But time is not her ally here. Time is yours. See, in the first few days of your silence, she feels a void, but she won't admit it. Instead, she reaches for distractions, Other men, social media, parties, anything that temporarily blocks the emotional sting. But distractions fade. They don't fill, they only postpone the ache. And the longer you remain silent, the louder your memory becomes. Why? Because you didn't slam doors, you didn't curse her out, you didn't plead or beg, you simply left. And in doing so, you took back control over something powerful, your presence. You were a source of masculine energy in her life, steady, thoughtful, emotionally available. But she grew numb to it. She thought you'd always be one text away. And now, you're a ghost with a heartbeat. Not gone, just unreachable. She tries to play it cool, maybe she even matches with someone else. But here's the hard truth, replacement isn't the same as connection. She can talk to 10 new guys, but none of them have your emotional weight. Because while they talk about shallow things, you once spoke to her soul. While they try to impress her, you understood her. And that depth, that presence, she won't find it again in just anyone. At 2 a.m., her brain doesn't crave new attention. It replays familiar connection. And that's why you haunt her. She starts to question herself. Why did I pull away from him? Why didn't I value him more? Why do I feel like I messed up something rare? You, my brother, have become a mirror, one she now has to face alone. And let's not confuse silence with weakness. When a man walks away with grace and doesn't look back, it speaks volumes about his emotional discipline. Most men leave breadcrumbs they post to get her attention. They try to show her what she's missing, but the stoic man doesn't need to perform. He doesn't post cryptic messages or reply to her stories with hidden intent. He simply removes himself, knowing full well, if she's truly awakened by his absence, she'll come forward with clarity, not confusion. And if she doesn't, he's still good. Because his identity was never tied to her recognition. His self-worth wasn't built on her replies. He didn't fall apart when the texting stopped. He grew stronger. And this is where your true power lies. You become the one that got away, not because you wanted to be, but because you had the courage to let go of what didn't honor your value. And that courage, that's what she now sees every time she scrolls through old messages. That's what stings when she sees your name and wonders where you are, what you're doing, and if you ever think about her. At 2 a.m., she's not just remembering you. She's longing for the version of herself that felt safe in your presence. But that version doesn't exist anymore, because she let go of the man who never needed to raise his voice to make a point, the man who walked away without drama, the man whose silence turned into a legacy. Let her sit with that. Let her soul digest the cost of your absence, and don't interfere, because silence, when rooted in strength, is a storm she cannot ignore. Drop a comment below. Do you believe silence speaks louder than words when walking away from someone who didn't value you? Chapter 4. The shift in power when she feels your absence more than your presence. There comes a moment in every emotionally charged connection, especially the ones where a man once gave too much, where the roles quietly reverse. Not with an argument, not with a final message, but with your complete emotional withdrawal. You used to be the one initiating, the one asking, "Are you okay?" The one sending voice notes at midnight just to make her feel secure. You gave, not out of desperation, but out of depth. Because real men give freely when they feel something real. But the tragedy? She didn't respect it. She didn't appreciate the access she had to your heart. And when you finally stopped, when the texts ended, when the phone calls died out, when she realized you weren't coming back with another emotional offering, everything changed. Now it's her who checks the phone in the middle of the night, her who hovers over your name but doesn't have the courage to message, her who scrolls through old photos, wondering why your energy felt different, stronger, safer, deeper. This is the power shift no one talks about. Because in the emotional economy of relationships, the one who controls their response holds the throne. When you were emotionally available, she had certainty. She could predict your moves. She knew if she pulled away, you'd chase. If she acted cold, you'd try harder. If she distanced herself, you'd bridge the gap. But now that you've reclaimed your power, you've become unpredictable. And unpredictability is intoxicating. Because women are wired to feel drawn to what they can't fully control. Your silence breaks the rhythm she once danced to. Your distance removes the safety net she once took for granted. She doesn't know how to handle this version of you. The version that no longer reacts, no longer explains, no longer stays available just because she once smiled at your presence. She starts noticing things. The new calmness in your aura. The fact that you don't watch her stories anymore. That your online presence doesn't revolve around her validation. That you're doing better without her. And that burns. Because she now sees what she couldn't before. You were not needy. You were loyal. You were not clingy. You were consistent. You weren't weak. You were present. And that kind of presence, it's rare, not easily found, and once lost, not easily replaced. But here's where it goes even deeper. When a man walks away with quiet dignity, he doesn't just haunt a woman's mind. He reshapes her standards. From that point forward, she will compare every man to you. She'll search for your depth in someone else's shallow humor. She'll crave your emotional stability when the next man plays games. She'll miss your honesty when the new guy avoids real conversations. And at 2 a.m. when she's alone with her thoughts, when no validation is hitting her phone, when no compliments are soothing her ego, when the world goes dark and the mirror of truth shines bright, she'll finally feel what she made you feel. That quiet ache, that longing, that wondering if someone you once had is now forever gone. And here's what makes your silence so devastating. You didn't block her. You didn't insult her. You didn't explode. You didn't need to. You outgrew the situation. You stepped into a version of yourself that no longer seeks love that's confusing, that no longer gives energy where it isn't returned, that no longer asks for clarity from someone who thrives in emotional fog. Your silence isn't just about her. It's a declaration to the universe that you now value yourself enough to walk away from anything that doesn't honor you. And she feels that deeply. Because a man who leaves without turning it into a performance, a man who doesn't try to make her jealous, doesn't try to force a reaction, doesn't need to be seen, he's the man she can't forget. At 2 a.m. she won't just remember the way you held her hand. She'll remember how it felt when you let go without needing her to hold on. And while she tosses and turns, wondering if she'll ever get another chance, you've already closed that chapter in your soul. Not in bitterness, not in hatred, but in peace. And that peace, that's what makes you powerful. Because in a world of desperate chasers and emotionally unstable men, you've become the exception. The man who knew his value the moment she questioned it. Never forget this. You didn't walk away because you stopped caring. You walked away because you started caring more about yourself. And that, my brother, is a standard she will never forget. Drop your thoughts below. Have you reached the point where your peace meant more than proving your worth to someone? Let's talk about it. Now you understand something most men never realize, that your silence isn't emptiness, it's presence without permission. You stopped texting her, but not because you stopped caring. You stopped because she stopped reciprocating, because peace became more valuable than constant questioning, because your energy is sacred and you finally chose to protect it. Let this be the reminder: you don't need to chase closure. You don't need to beg for understanding. And you certainly don't need to convince someone of your worth. If she only realizes your value in your absence, then she never truly valued you in your presence. At 2 a.m., when she thinks of you, that's not your signal to reach out. That's her consequence to carry. Because the man who walks away with grace, who doesn't flinch when he's ignored, who doesn't break when he's forgotten, that man becomes unforgettable. So keep walking with your head high, not in anger, but in inner freedom. You've said all you needed to say by saying nothing. And the echo of your silence, it will say more to her than 1,000 messages ever could. You are no longer her safety net. You are no longer the fallback plan. You are the storm she never saw coming, and the peace she'll never find again. If you felt this message, like, share, and subscribe to Stoic Golden Tribe, where we teach men how to lead with strength, walk with truth, and master the power of emotional self-respect. And drop a comment below, let the tribe know, are you done texting, so she can finally feel the silence?